69, located near Chanticleer Park. This was continued also from the December 7th meeting, and it's a request to allow, one 4-foot tall by 14.6 inch diameter Cantana, 2 27-inch by 12-inch remote radio units, one 7-inch by 10-inch diplexer shroud, a PG&E smart meter and associated minor equipment. The existing pole will go from 47.7 feet to 58.17, and then with the extension or the Cantana up to 62.17 feet above ground. A street light is located on the existing pole and would be replaced on the new utility pole. This application requires a commercial development permit. A variance is also required to exceed 53 feet in height, which is allowed by code for wireless equipment in a residential zone, and also requires a determination that this project is exempt from further environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. The owner, once again, is the County of Santa Cruz. This is going on a PG&E, I believe a PG&E pole again. The applicant is Ken Hart, representing Swift Consulting, is in Supervisory District 1. Project planner is Jonathan DeSalvo, and we will ask for a staff presentation.
Jonathan DeSalvo, Planning Department staff. This is a proposal to install a microcell on a new replacement power pole comprising one 4-foot tall by 14.6 inch diameter Cantana with related pole mounted equipment. The maximum height of the proposed new utility pole with the Cantana affixed to the top would measure approximately 62.17 feet above ground. This pole is located in the county right-of-way on a sidewalk on the west side of Chanticleer Avenue, approximately 215 feet north of the intersection with Persimmon Court, adjacent to Chanticleer Avenue Park at APN number 029071 and 07169. Nearby parcels are zoned R-1-6 and PF. All parcels across the street contain residential uses, and the immediate surrounding neighborhood is predominantly residential. The project site is located approximately 88.7 feet from the nearest structure, which is residential. As originally proposed, the wireless communication facility would exceed the 53-foot height by approximately 9 feet, necessitating a variance. Staff has recommended that the height of the facility not exceed the 53-foot height limit, and the height variance not be granted. The applicant has offered a revised design, and photo simulations of the revised design have been included in the staff report as Exhibit G. This revised design features a side-mounted Cantana that will be placed under the 53-foot height limit. As conditioned, the size of the Cantana would also be required to not exceed 24 inches tall and 15 inches in diameter, with an antenna mount no more than 1 foot from the side of the utility pole and any standoff from the utility pole required to accommodate state-mandated requirements. The RF report prepared by Hammond and Edison Consulting Engineers dated April 23, 2018 indicates the project would result in an exposure limit of approximately 0.2% of the applicable public exposure limit at ground level and 0.29% at the second floor elevation of any nearby building. Consequently, sufficient evidence has been submitted to indicate the proposal would be in compliance with FCC regulations with respect to RF exposure levels. Specific to this site, since the December 7th hearing, the department has received one general inquiry and several letters requesting that the item be continued due to the height at which the hearing posters were posted at the site. Staff recommends the following edit to the staff report on page 1, table 1. The adjacent address for application 11099 should read 2698 Madison Lane, not 2688 Madison Lane. As conditioned, the project is consistent with all applicable codes and policies of the zoning ordinance and general plan. Staff therefore recommends approval of commercial development number 181-100 as conditioned and acceptance of notice of exemption from further environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. This concludes my presentation for application 181-100. Staff is available for any questions.
Did we receive any communications regarding this item? Any public communications, emails, letters, phone calls, in-person visits?
So since the December 7th hearing, the department received one general inquiry and several letters requesting that the item be continued due to the height at which the hearing posters were posted at the site.
Okay. And so the posting was the same issue as the previous one, for the previous application?
That's correct.
Okay. How about the shot clock for this one?
So it's in the same boat as the previous application.
So they're going to extend it to January 11th?
2019, that's correct.
Okay. So staff is recommending that we deny the variance and limit the height to 53 feet?
That's correct.
Okay, so if we limit it to 53 feet, that wouldn't meet the GO95 separation, which, what would it be, a side mounted?
The applicant has revised their design from a antenna that would be, so the original proposal is that the antenna would be mounted on the top of the utility pole, on top of the replacement utility pole. And as revised, the pole would also be replaced, but it would be a side-mounted antenna under the 53-foot height limit.
Okay. Is this a standalone facility, or does it rely upon the other requested facilities in order to operate, or could this operate on its own?
According to the information the applicant has provided, these are all standalone facilities.
Okay, so let's go ahead and open up the hearing for public testimony. If the applicant or applicant's representative is present and would like to address this item, please come forward and state your name for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes. Good morning once again.
Good morning. Once again, my name is Jeremy Stroop. I'm with Vinculum Services. Today I'm representing Verizon Wireless. Our objective today is to request the approval of 3 level 5 development permits. The purpose of our project is to attach Verizon telephone equipment to telephone poles in order to increase network capacity. Our design is simple. It consists of one antenna with telephone equipment mounted vertically to a telephone pole. We have, as the staff has indicated, revised our antenna design due to the 53-foot height restriction that would require a variance. We are now proposing a side-mounted 2-foot antenna based on the WCF 006 interpretation that would be no higher than 53 feet. The pole will be replaced by PG&E due to termite damage. And again, a visual simulation was provided to staff last week of this antenna design. The pole-mounted equipment remains the same. Consists of 2 radios, 1 fiber optic box, 1 power disconnect switch, 1 PG&E meter. This design, again, meets the WCF 006 interpretation of a small cell. Pole-mounted equipment will also be painted to match the color of the pole as well as the antenna. Because the radio equipment is passively cooled and has no moving parts, none of our equipment produces noises. As stated before, PG&E performs a structural analysis known as an OCalc report to verify the structural integrity of the pole when our equipment is attached. This would be a pole replacement, so the threshold for the O calculation is lowered to 25% of the maximum structural ability of the pole. Included again in the staff report are copies of the third-party radio frequency report, which confirms each proposed small cell node complies with the federal standards for limiting public exposure to radio frequency energy. Once again, in attendance today is Bill Hemmett of Hemmett Edison, the firm that produced these reports. And Mr. Hemmett is available to answer any questions this administrator has from the public today. In closing, we do feel that the most appropriate place for telephone equipment is telephone poles. Staff has recommended the approval of application 18-1100-124. We concur with staff's recommendation and request the zoning administrator approve this application, allowing Verizon to increase its capacity of its network. Thank you.
Okay, regarding the shot clock and the extension letter allowing until January 11th, how did you land on that date, January 11th? Because that's just a couple of weeks from the holiday period.
That takes into account an approval today with the appeal period.
So if there's an appeal, you will extend it further? Is that the plan?
Well, if this was approved today and there was an appeal, I believe that the appeal would stop the shot clock. No, let me. No, actually, I apologize. If there was an appeal, the shot clock is still in effect.
Right.
That's right. I apologize.
Okay. Why this location? Did you look at other locations?
We did. Including the primary pole location, we looked at an additional 4 poles in the area. Reasons that we could not attach 2 other poles were pole in residence driveway. Primary risers on some poles, that's high power that runs down the side of the pole. PG&E will not allow us to attach to that. Another pole has multiple risers and there's no GO95 climbing space available.
Okay.
One was a viable alternate, but it was not chosen because it was extremely close to a driveway entrance. So between the two, when faced with a driveway or no driveway, that's why we chose the primary.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's open up the hearing for additional public testimony. If there's anyone from the public that wants to address item number 2 on our agenda, please come forward and we'll give you 3 minutes. Good morning once again.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. Again, my name is Riley Gerbrandt. I'm going to continue basically where I left off last time. And I do note that you said that we should repeat our public comments for each item. So one of the things we found out is that the industry wants to roll out more of these cell sites in the next couple of years. There was this industry report by PricewaterhouseCoopers. They indicated that there's about 200,000 cell towers in the U.S. right now. There's maybe an additional 80,000 antennas. International Data Corporation estimates that 2 million more will be required by 2021.
Whoa.
So we know that there's going to be lots of these. So this I can submit as a public record. We also have for the public record statements here in Santa Cruz. The telecom said, and this is from Mike Ferry at the city of Santa Cruz, they said that they would roll out new designated low-power DAS antenna approximately every 500 feet or 40 power poles per square mile. And Verizon in their FCC compliance statement to the FCC this year said that in 2017, 62% of its wireless deployments were small cells. So we expect that most of these will be small cells. So these are public comments. I have a graph that can show you the same trends, that there's going to be much, much more of these in the near future. So I made the conclusion that these should not be CEQA exempt because they will have cumulative effects. Now you referred to the 2018 February ADA, I think it was, versus Santa Cruz County. The court there did decide that 11 poles in question were allowed under CEQA. They were smaller than these ones. They were 4 feet and a bayonet with 2 feet contents on top. Now the key there was that they said they did not, the applicants did not, or the plaintiffs did not show evidence that there would be future sites planned. I have submitted evidence showing that there will be. So this is different than it was then. And the location, the court did say, could be not just that one location, but could be an area that would be impacted. The key thing was the visual and auditory impacts. You need to see one site when you see another site when you're standing at one location. So every 500 to 400 feet, we will be able to see the next adjacent site under that sort of situation. So this is very different than the Aptos residence versus Santa Cruz County, because we will be able to see the individual sites when you're standing at one or the other.
Okay, thank you.
And can I just state that the comments I made for the last one, I want to apply for this one?
Yes,
Great, thank you.
thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to address item number 2 on our agenda? Application 181100. Good morning again.
Good morning, Joanne Wafeld, Scotts Valley. I have a question, actually. Well, first I want to say that in those CDs that I gave you, Martin Paul, expert, 60 peer-reviewed papers, has been studying ionism radiation on the health of humans. He says every G we go up, it is more health-damaging effects. Science, pure science, can't argue with that. And the question I have, if the FCC and the telecoms are saying they're going to push these cell towers and small cells with disregard to our health, how is this supposed to be for the people? How are these cell towers and faster microwave pulse radiation supposed to be for the people? Can you explain that?
We'll ask the applicant to address that. We can ask the applicant at the end of public testimony.
Okay, because if we don't have our physical health, and Martin Paul and the other scientists are saying it will interfere with our brain functioning, we don't have our mind and our body, we don't have much of anything. Life is pretty bad. So how is this for the people? And the second thing I want to address is, I think we need to be questioning the FCC. We need to be questioning the 1996 FCC Telecom Act that lets telecoms put weapons of mass destruction into our neighborhoods and in our businesses, on our business buildings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning once again.
Good morning, Paul Casano, Live President. Much of this last year, I've been working on this issue, and I've learned that aesthetics is one of the only ways that a municipality can work with changing these installations. And as Riley just mentioned, there are proposed a lot of these coming down the pike. So what is approved now is what we're going to be seeing a lot of. Much attention has been given to the height of the canister and the overhang of the canister. You can drive around and look at these installations that are already there. It's not so much the canister that are visually obtrusive. It's the equipment mounted on the side of the pole that sticks out almost 2 feet from the center of the pole, with the attendant wires and pipes going up and down. Now, the burden of options for aesthetics really needs to be on the applicant, and this is not being provided to the citizenry, to the boards that need to review this stuff. So again, what gets approved today for installation is what we're going to be seeing on every block. If it's ugly, we're going to be seeing a lot of ugly all over town, all over the country.
Good morning. State your name for the record.
I don't want to set my house in my school.
Thank you.
That was Mackenzie Huff. She's 8 years old and she attends a school on the Green Acres campus. My name's Melanie Huff. I'm her mom. Both of my children right here, 8 and 6, go to Tierra Pacifica, which is a school that's on the Green Acres campus. I'm not really sure how we're just finding out about this. We actually share a fence with Green Acres, so we live very close to this proposed cell tower development. Thankfully, I'm on next door Live Oak, and that's how actually I heard about it. Really, when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter about aesthetics to me. It doesn't matter about my property value, although those things will be affected. The very most important thing is health. And we've gone through a host of issues with him, and I found out we were living right next to a cell phone tower before when I was pregnant with him. So this is a huge thing, and I know we're addressing the third article, but we have to go because they've been really patient. But having this built on or right near an elementary school campus, to me, is just unfathomable. With all the research and with all the new studies that are coming out just this year, very, very prestigious studies that are coming out. This isn't just like whack, pseudoscience. This is science. There are very many studies coming about the harmful effects of cancers and all the neurodegenerative diseases that are affected by cell phone tower exposure. Is very real, and I do believe that the FCC will start making changes once more and more studies come out about this. I'm concerned about my children's health. I'm concerned about our elementary school. I'm concerned about the teachers and the staff and everyone who lives there. I'm concerned about the community. I'm concerned about our health, and this is very concerning, obviously, to me, and we're taking time out of our day to come and say that we care about our community, we care about Live Oak, we care about the children and the staff and the teachers and the public servants and everyone. And I have Verizon, and I have great cell phone service right where I live. So I don't see why this has to be here in that specific location. I know that this is for the third one, but I'd like to go on record saying that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning once again.
Good morning. My name is Joshua Logan. I live on Persimmon Court, 250 feet away from this location, with my small children who are 4 and 6 years old. I'm concerned that this installation would have an unacceptable visual impact on the Chanticleer County Park and on a residential neighborhood. Once again, the antennas that are proposed do not meet the Santa Cruz County Code definition for a microcell installation. They're not omnidirectional whip antennas or directional panel antennas. They are canister antennas. In addition to the antennas, there will be 5 pieces of auxiliary equipment pole mounted. These will be between 8 and 18 feet above the sidewalk, and they will hang 2 feet out over the sidewalk. And in that location, the sidewalk is 3 feet wide, so everybody coming and going from the park will be walking underneath these overhanging electronics boxes. 8 feet, I can almost touch it. This will be visually incompatible with the park and with the residential neighborhood. This is an inappropriate location for this. It's surrounded on 3 sides by residential zoning, which in Santa Cruz County Code is a prohibited area for wireless communication facilities. It's also adjacent to the historic Miller House, which is zoned PRL, and it's located in a county park where the county is set to build the Yo's Haven Playground. There was a huge community effort to get this built, and it will be the county's first and only inclusive playground for children with disabilities. These are significant county and community resources that this will have an impact on. The staff report is incorrect when it says that there will not be any impact on a significant county resource. This is a park where children are going to play. This is a park where children with disabilities are going to play. It's a gym in our neighborhood, and you're going to be putting this blight right there next to it. I'm concerned that we didn't get any information about alternative analyses that were done. He looked at 4 different utility poles right in that vicinity. There are numerous locations within less than half a mile which are in commercial and light industrial zones that would have none of these attendant problems with them within less than half of a mile. And I'm also concerned that the changes, which are recommended by the staff to lower the height of the antenna, will actually invalidate the RF evaluation that they've done. That RF evaluation was done for an antenna located at 64 feet high. Now it's going to be located at less than 53 feet high. How can you go forward with that RF evaluation saying that it's going to be safe at 64 feet when you've reduced the height by 11 feet at least? And it's going to be side mounted as well. I'm also concerned that you may not have read the rest of the letters. There have been numerous letters submitted to this. You asked staff whether there were any letters submitted. You said there were several. There are a lot actually attached to your staff report. I wrote 2 of them. My neighbors wrote some of them. Please read them. The neighbors don't want this. Community doesn't want it. You need to reject this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to address this item? Please come forward, state your name for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes. Good morning.
Good morning, if I may address you as your honorable director. I am a recognized national security scholar and global security scholar going back to approximately 2002. I'm also a federal bank fraud whistleblower on record. My comments today I'm hoping to be illuminative and somewhat imperative. One of the great concerns about anything, including smart meters, is that they represent a system failure in something that used to be called the underwriter's laboratory process of technology evaluation, testing, and rollout. It used to be that before a toaster could be thrown in your bathtub, it would be tested to see what would happen and to determine what appropriate public service announcements and warning labels would be required. There's been a long tradition of the underwriter's laboratory having excellence. To have that short-circuited by PG&E, it's no surprise that in current news we see the fact that PG&E is going through executive house cleaning right now. So that's, to me, a ray of light in the darkness. What is extremely alarming is the 5G juggernaut on the horizon, where one of my favorite phrases for Capitol Hill testimony, where we are broaching a current situation, analytically speaking, we're still looking at unlimited risk. And moving to mitigated risks is got a rich history of being effective. Sufficiently effective is up to public health officials. That is another part of the dysfunction of the system. Public health officials have a very difficult time getting their arms around these issues. Fortunately, educated citizenry is an enormous help. Of course, the scientists, I have 1 minute left. Conceivably, global warming sequestration efforts could be set back by the radiation burden of 20,000 satellites impinging on the ionosphere. In the Cold War, we over-tested nuclear weapons. Over 300 nuclear weapons were tested. Some of them, Starfish Castle, did lasting environmental damage, and we learned those limits and crawled back. In this case, we can easily imagine establishing a new baseline at Stanford on an imminent announcement on global sequestration breakthrough that could lead to a Nobel Prize, supervised by a former Secretary of Energy, Nobel Prize-winning climate scientist, Chu, at Stanford, has pledged to move these issues forward. We can volunteer some supercomputer time that would serve a future journal publication, peer-reviewed, of course, etc. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we have your name for the record?
Drake Alexander Mitchell, DOB 41865. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning again.
Good morning again. Okay. Well, firemen have a law in their favor exempting them from the placing of cell antennas near their fire stations. So why shouldn't the same concerns be for disabled children. Chanticleer site is historic. It has the historic Miller House on its premises. The land is publicly owned, and it's designated as a public park, and it is the future location of a disabled children's playground. So according to county code, residential districts are prohibited districts. The applicant has not shown adequate alternative sites for the proposed residential areas. The applicant has not shown the need for these installations to close a gap in coverage. Aesthetics are one of the few avenues for municipalities to dispute these installations, and the public has not been given timely information as to the aesthetics of these installations. No options, images, or mock-ups were provided. The zoning administration should not decide until the residents have fair opportunity to assess these aesthetics. There's also the potential of fire hazards that haven't been addressed. Lastly, the most important, the members of the community have not given their consent to any of this. County residents deserve more consideration from our officials rather than having them defer to corporate interests over the needs and the concerns of the community. Zoning should deny these applications. And I just want to, again, show these photos because from the schematics that I studied, from the center of the pole...
Okay, ma'am, you need to be at the mic so we can pick this up. This is being recorded.
So I also want to put these photos into record. The schematics that I studied that were in the staff report showed from the center of the pole, the outside boxes were 1.5 to 2 feet out. And that would make them look just like these installations that we already have that are ugly and intrusive. The plans were not very revealing as far as any profiles. The schematics really downplayed the profile of the look and the aesthetics of these installations. And is that what they're going to look like, Jonathan? The ones that just went by?
Just addressing the zoning administrator at this point, but
Those are what, as far as we know, that's what we're going to end up with.
We will ask the applicant when we're through getting testimony too, if they have a copy or if staff has a copy of a rendering, we'll have them share it with you.
That would be excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else that wants to address this item?
I want to thank all the previous speakers here who are with the community, not with Verizon. And I wanted to ask you again, as I did at the last hearing, did you view the 15-minute testimony of Dr. Sharon Goldberg before the Michigan
Yes, I did.
legislature? Okay, so you saw that. So that, you know, she stated that this 5G rollout is an untested application of a technology we know to be harmful.
This is not 5G.
And she said, we know this technology to be harmful, and sources were given there. I contend this is going to be 5G by Verizon's own promotional videos that were shown at this event. You can see them on TV at the event, and I'll give you a copy of this, November 30th, 5G microwave onslaught, what it means for us. Dr. Carl Merritt spoke, Marketa Bilkova, acupuncturist, Dr. Brian Anthony, chiropractor. The video showed, and you can watch it on here, here's a utility pole with, and it penetrates walls. This is just great speed. And it shows the 4G antennas kind of higher up. Then it shows we can just put this 5G right on here, the same pole, or we can put up new poles for our 5G technology. So, right, the Verizon promotionals are documenting their plans and visually showing it. So I will give you this. And, you know, I think of this book, Toxic Sludge is Good for You. It has such an impact on me. Lies, Damn Lies, and the Public Relations Industry is the title by Stauber and Rampton. And I think, toxic radiation is good for you. Lies, damn lies in the public relations industry. You know, they're doctors, you know, what is the Hippocratic oath? First do no harm. The county should first do no harm. We know this radiation is harmful. And it seems to me there's a conflict of interest here because this is the public right-of-way. The county owns it. Of course, us taxpayers are paying for it. You're not supposed to incommode the public. And you're approving this. Isn't that a conflict of interest? And I've heard some phrases of, let's see, what this, that there's misinformation, lack of disclosure, and concealment fraud. The facts are being concealed from the public of the documented harm. I'm going to leave you with this brochure on smart meters that cause fires, that cause injuries and fatalities. And the other thing I'll leave you with is FCC. Let's see what this is titled, and these tremors are related to the microwaves. Nationwide violations of FCC radiation limits at wireless antenna sites. And it cites wireless radiation can harm health. The FCC fails to enforce its own wireless radiation limits. So when we hear, they're following what they're supposed to, and these are without scientific basis at all, the safety limits. And the last thing I'll give you is Verizon Communications here with their filings, and it says, we are subject to a significant amount of litigation which could require us to pay significant damages or settlements. Our wireless business also faces personal injury and consumer class action lawsuits relating to alleged health effects of wireless phones or radio frequency transmitters, and class action lawsuits that challenge marketing practices and disclosures relating to alleged adverse health effects of handheld wireless phones. We may incur significant expenses in defending these lawsuits. In addition, we may be required to pay significant awards of settlements. Of course, they will try to deflect this onto government agencies approving their radiation-emitting, biologically damaging, cancer-causing devices. Thank you.
Thank you. On the agenda. Good morning. State your name for the record.
Good morning. My name is Tom Davis. I live on El Dorado in Live Oak. I'm also a small business owner in Santa Cruz. I have a specific question regarding this permitting process. Is there anything in this permitting process that prevents the telecommunications company from changing the equipment that is installed on the pole? So for instance, if they don't change the external antenna, is there anything that requires them to do further permitting or approval if they switch the technology, the type of transmitter? That's my question.
Well, generally, if 5G comes on board and it is significantly different from what's stated in our code, or if the FCC does not somehow preempt 5G from further county review, then yes, they'd have to come back and comply with whatever additional requirements that we had.
Thank you. That sounds like a lot of ifs to me.
And it really is, because I'm going to assume that the FCC probably will supersede us, that they will preempt whatever authority that we have regarding 5G. But we just don't know at this point. It's speculative.
Thank you. So I just would like to say I am here to ask you to decline this application and all future applications of small cell transmitters or anything that falls within a half mile of residences, schools, or places of business. This is dangerous and harmful technology. The debate is over. It is not opinion. 2/3 of non-industry funded research clearly demonstrates that radio frequency and microwave transmitting technology is harmful to people and other living things. Radio frequency and microwave radiation is implicated in numerous cancers, DNA damage, tumors of the heart and brain, diabetes, infertility, and developmental impairment. It is particularly harmful to children. These effects can take decades to appear, and this technology has only been prevalent for about 18 years, which means that the generation that grew up exposed to this has not, or is just barely reaching childbearing age. We do not know what's going to happen. At the present level of irradiation, there is a looming health crisis that will cost our health, our lives, and billions of dollars in healthcare expenses. If the small cells, which apparently there are up to 40 per square mile proposed for Santa Cruz County, are rolled out, this could be hundreds of times worse. There is no data or studies that cover the level to which we are being irradiated. If any of you look at your phone right now, I mean, how many different Wi-Fi networks can you see? How many different providers are we being zapped by at the moment? We are being exposed at rates that are unfathomable compared to when my generation grew up, and we're really just 25 years ago. The federal laws that have been enacted to streamline the deployment of small cell transmitters are in direct violation of our human rights and our constitutional rights. We, the people, do not consent to this violation. This is a clear matter of self-defense. We do not recognize the laws of the FCC as valid. The FCC is a wholly captured agency. It is occupied and controlled by former employees, high-ranking officials of the telecommunications industry. Due to these blatant conflicts of interest, the FCC is not qualified to represent us. In times like these, it is the duty of local government to pass laws to protect us from the transgressions of the Fed and to do everything in their power to stop harm to their citizens, including denial of permits, because it is the right thing to do, period. Please take a stand for our community and our health. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak on this item?
I'd like to give, excuse me,
We'll give you 3 minutes.
I'd like to give my time to Riley.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'll respect this time. So I'd like to continue where I left off. Now, when I read the specific court cases regarding this, CEQA exemption, so let's see, Aptos Residents Association versus Santa Cruz County and Crown Castle 2018, they cited Robinson versus City and County of San Francisco, wherein the court concluded, quote, given the overall purpose and logic of CEQA and the guidelines, we construe the same place to refer to an area whose size and configuration depend on the nature and potential environmental impact of the specific project under consideration. End quote. Later, in the same decision, it says, quote, in the present case, residents have specified that only T-Mobile's project's visual and auditory impacts as environmental damage they contend. So they said, I'll end that quote there, that's the only ones that plaintiff specified. So that's why the court is only looking at those particular environmental impacts. I'll re-continue the quote. They contend those environmental impacts resulted from the project. Those impacts are inherently limited by the range of human sensory perception. Thus, with respect to this project, the cumulative impact exception applies only if the record contains evidence supporting a fair argument that future installations or potential future installations of similar equipment are likely to occur within visual or auditory range. End quote. And then Aptos Residents versus Santa Cruz County just specified the 10 then remaining applications. They said that they could not extend beyond those because there was not any evidence supporting the fact that there were going to be additional installations. We now have documentation that AT&T and Verizon each plan to install over 100 new wireless facilities in the area in 2019 alone. They are not necessarily for the 5G network. When 5G comes out, they will be spaced 500 to 400 feet by 2021. That is 121 per square mile if I just calculated node to node. This is a lot of facilities. Not only do the environmental impacts include visual impacts and auditory impacts, but they also include impacts to trees, which we as residents rely upon for visual beauty. The electromagnetic radiation affects trees and has been shown to kill trees. I provided you that documentation for the staff, for the file, which you hopefully would have read. The electromagnetic radiation of these current and planned facilities will overlap, and they will have significant adverse physical and visual environmental impacts to our communities by harming and killing trees, among other things. So what we need to do is enforce our county code. Our county code says that the applicant must provide a map of all existing and future planned facilities so that the county and the public, and this is where I infer, can fully assess the cumulative environmental impacts of these facilities. We have not been given the ability to do that. And also the county code itself, at the end of that paragraph, says that information will be kept confidential by the county if the applicant requests in writing. So if the applicant were to request that in writing, the county would not release that to any public sharing platform. So that argument that this is proprietary information is null and void. You should uphold the requirement and deem up to provide this information so that you can assess the cumulative impacts under CEQA.
Okay, thank you. If anyone else wants to address Item 210, come forward and state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Jim Stanford. I live near the Chanticleer Park. The proposed tower is visible from a number of windows on the north side of my house, and so I feel pretty directly impacted by this. I'm concerned about the uncertainties around the health issues. Mr. Tanner referred to Israel, for example, having much higher standards, tighter standards for the safe amount of radiation, and they're certainly a country that is very tech savvy and tech friendly. And I'm concerned that our country has a habit of lagging behind the science. If we look at the tobacco industry, we can see that regulations came along about 50 years too late, and thousands of people died and were harmed by this substance. I'm afraid we're kind of on the beginning edge of a similar tidal wave where there's just a lot of uncertainty. I am aware that the electromagnetic spectrum is complex, and if we just look at the part that we can sense, infrared light warms us, red light to blue light is what we see. You go a little bit further on the spectrum and we get into UVA and UVB, and it causes sunburn of various sorts. So I'm concerned this part of the spectrum that we are not able to sense. Various telecommunications are using different parts of it. They probably affect us differently. This is extremely complex, and as a citizen, I feel like I ought to have a PhD in physics to comprehend all of this, and yet I'm concerned. That's the basic thing. I'm concerned that this hasn't been well studied. I think the point was made earlier. I believe the FCC is largely a servant of industry at this point. I'm looking at the demographics of this particular meeting, and I'm noticing that there's a lot of citizens who took time to come and speak to this issue and their concern. The only people seeming to support this rollout are people in the employ of telecommunications industry. So I'm also concerned that okay, well, this is a Verizon application, and by the way, as other people have said, my Verizon reception is great. I don't have a need for anything further. But then is AT&T and Sprint and all these other companies going to want to be putting up their own poles or adding to the overall overlay of electromagnetic burden on the community? So there's a lot of concerns that I have. As far as property values, that the aesthetics and the health concerns are going to impact me directly. Who's going to compensate me for the fact that some new buyer will look at my home and say, oh, it's a nice home, but there's that cell tower right outside the back window. No thanks. Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Item number 2 on our agenda that would like to do so, please come forward and state your name for the record. Good morning once again. Please state your name for the record.
Good morning. Satya Orion. I'm very concerned about, again, the same question of noticing. Now, in my mind, the 10-day requirement was made for a reason, to notify the public. I noticed that most of the people here are here because we notified them from EMF Aware. Someone said they noticed from seeing something on Nextdoor. So I think that there's probably lots more people who could be here if they had known. I actually went to all the sites and went to this one, and I saw the sign, and it had, again, the yellow paper stapled on top of it. The smaller paper was not legible, and the other one wasn't either. I knew what it said. I tried to read it. I couldn't. It was probably at least 8 feet high. So to me, there seems to be some intentionality of putting something that high. They must have needed a ladder. I mean, and so it just doesn't feel right to me that this would be done. I'm also concerned about the changes to the equipment. And I stood next to the pole, and I'm thinking kids do that too. This is a dirt parking lot. The pole is right in the parking lot. This is where the playground is. There's going to be people all around there, right by the pole, which all the equipment is now much lower than it had been shown in the drawings, shown in the plans. So I know what kids do. They go up to poles, they touch things, they look at things. They're, all of those people in that parking lot who are right up next to that pole are going to be more affected than these people we're talking about. Everyone's going to be affected, but in particular, I don't know how this can be ignored. And I so appreciate your comments that you're concerned about 5G. And I hear that you're aware that there are health effects. This is the same stuff. That's just an extension of it. So please help us. You're the only one that can help us. Please do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? state your name for the record. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Marigold Fine. I live on Persimmon Court, about 150 feet from the proposed cell tower. My comments are divided into aesthetics, property values, and health and safety. Aesthetics, installing a higher pole festooned with transmitters will be an aesthetic downgrade to the neighborhood. We currently enjoy underground utilities on our street, which enhances the appearance of our neighborhood. Adding a new cell phone transmitter to Chanticleer will downgrade the neighborhood, and it will be an eyesore to all who come and enjoy the park. The proposed transmitter would be an unwelcome visual intrusion. Property values. Any downgrade in aesthetics and health and safety is a downgrade in property values. Many potential buyers may be driven away from my home, not only by aesthetics, but also by their perception of health risk. Most people do not want to live near a cell phone tower, even a so-called small one. Health and safety. I regard this proposed installation as an experiment on humans without their consent. There is much controversy about these small cell towers, and we do not know what the actual health risks might be. There are a number of reputable studies showing that they could affect human and wildlife health very adversely. Until there is a body of independent, conclusive research, I object to being a non-consenting subject in this experiment. Many countries around the world have seen fit to set much lower limits on electromagnetic exposure for preserving human health. The cities of Petaluma and Mill Valley, California have deferred their acceptance of this technology until more facts are known. Why can't we in Santa Cruz County be similarly cautious? Thank you very much.
Item number 2 on our agenda, application 181100. Is there anyone else present that would like to address this item? Okay, we'll give you 3 minutes. Please state your name again for the record.
Thank you. Bruce Tanner. Well, it's quite clear that the FCC is a captive agency. It does not serve the people of the United States, and it patently does not have to serve the people of the United States. It was created to serve the industry. The Telecommunications Act was written by the industry. But the FCC is not the only captive agency. This county, Ms. Williams, is a captive agency. It is really disturbing to see you appearing to bend over backwards to permit these sites, which, as Marigold just said, this is an experiment. They don't know what the effects of this radiation is, and the evidence is that epidemics are already being created by this technology, by the 4G technology. As I said at the previous hearing, when they turned on the 4G antenna over 5 branches acupuncture school in Santa Cruz, many members of the staff and students were incapacitated, immediately incapacitated, and they had to move classrooms and offices down in the building so people could merely survive and perform their jobs. Now, we don't know what health costs that they paid for that. Dr. Martin Paul says that in his opinion, the primary cause of autism at this point is not vaccinations. In fact, it is EMF exposure. The EMF exposure that we have now is over 1 trillion times the baseline of biological life on this planet. And it's, I think, it's millions of times over the exposures that we had even back in the 1970s. And we're just going down this road, you know, as Riley said, we're not looking at the cumulative effects of this. And every radiation exposure that we experience is cumulative. It builds up in the body. And for some reason, our county seems to be in bed with the telecom industry. Why is this? Why is this happening? Why are you not considering that this is an experiment which is in direct violation of the Nuremberg Treaty, which the United States is a party to? It's in direct violation. There has to be informed consent for this to go on. But we're here, we're telling you, we're informed, but we do not consent.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wants to address this item? Please state your name for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
My name is Suzanne Davis. I can't really top all the excellent commentary here, but I would like to tell you it's obvious that we are coming to you today as community members that refuse to allow the proliferation of cell towers into our neighborhoods. We are informed on the dangers of wireless radiation, and we refuse to give our consent to this harmful trespass. Most other citizens of our county are unaware of the dangers of wireless radiation, of the industry, and our government's own plans to saturate our environment with wireless technology. The industry goal, as you've heard, is for over 40 towers per square mile. The FCC, so the Harvard just came out with a study, Harvard ethics study, that the FCC is a captured agency. That's the title of the study. As well, there's no monitoring of the emissions coming from these towers by either the government or the industry. Now, so how do you know what's coming out of them? Furthermore, it's been proven that many times it's as high as 600% over allowed FCC levels. They've found that thousands of cell towers in the U.S. have been out of compliance when tested independently. So I do need to speak to personal liability and culpability for your choices as administrators within the government. Santa Cruz County is a corporation. You are employees of the corporation. You are liable for your choices as employees for the corporation. And so is the industry also. You're making decisions too. You're deciding to implement this stuff. You are also personally culpable for what you decide to do in your lives. There are laws greater than what the FCC creates because they're so incredibly corrupt. And those are common law and the Constitution and our inherent human right to health and safety. So your positions in the corporation of Santa Cruz County do not shield you from liability incurred by your choices and actions as employees of this corporate government. The deployment of wireless technology by the industry is a runaway train, and you are helping that train run on time. We do not give our consent for any more cell towers in our county. You need to carefully consider the decisions you make in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that has spoken on item number 2 that would like to do so? Application 181100. Now is the time to do so. You've not spoken on this item and you want your comments captured as part of the record. Okay, seeing that there is no one that wants to address application 181100, I'm going to close the hearing from further public testimony at this time. And I do have some questions staff and the applicant. Maybe we'll begin with the applicant. The question was raised by one of the speakers, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, because it is, I guess, somewhat subjective, but how is this for the people? That was the question that was asked. How does this benefit the people or residents?
So a greater number of people are accessing the internet and data through their mobile devices. What we find right now, this project adding capacity is much the same as adding additional lanes to Highway 1, especially during high traffic hours. But I'd like to also point out, though, that there are first responders here in Santa Cruz County that utilize the network. They are the Santa Cruz County Fire and Sheriff Department, as well as the Health Department. So I think that having a robust network in times of emergency would definitely help the community as a whole.
Okay, someone else raised the issue of that you are adding 100 of these facilities in the county in 2019. Is that correct?
My company, these are the only applications that we have. I don't have any further information for any other build out.
Okay. Is your company, do you have any applications presently being processed through the county, or this is it?
This is it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One other question, if I can, regarding the equipment that's attached. It looks like you have two 27-inch by 12-inch remote radio units, one 7-inch by 10-inch diplexer, and a PG&E smart meter and associated minor equipment. Do these come in varying sizes, or is this the standard size, or what? The 2 27 by 12-inch remote radio units. Do those come in a smaller size?
No, they do not. For this technology, this is the radio for the technology.
Okay. And it's preferable, I'm assuming, to have it all attached to the pole rather than ground equipment?
It is. Small cells are designed to place the radios as close as possible to the antennas.
Okay.
I would like to address one thing, though. Somebody had a question about adding additional radios and equipment. We are limited by WCF 006 to the size of the antennas, either 2 foot or 4 foot, and the cubic dimensions also.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So once again, was this was another one that had the noticing issue, right?
Yes. That's correct.
Okay. But when staff became aware of that, revised noticing was provided.
That's correct. So noticing was posted at eye level on December 14th, Friday.
So I'm just going to say right now for Verizon and for staff, for the future, because Verizon processes a significant number of applications Verizon has over the past. I've been sitting up for a ZA for over 8 years, and most of the applications that have been processed have been either Verizon or AT&T. So the routine that you have to go through is the same for every one of these applications. You gotta get it right so that this issue does not come up. I did go by and take a look at these sites on 2 occasions, and yes, you know, generally driving by on the street, you cannot see word for word the noticing requirements. But if you get out and you're standing on the sidewalk, you can reasonably see the information that's needed to contact. And if you can't, then you can contact the county. And maybe that's a message or reminder for the county as well. I think for us to go back and look at our noticing requirements, the lettering and size of notices. Because typically the noticing is not done for wireless facilities. It's typically done for if someone's doing an addition to a commercial or residential building, and therefore it is typically a lot easier to see. It's right in front of you. I think for these wireless facilities, we do want it up a little bit higher. So we'll try and work with Verizon, AT&T, and the providers and refine it and get it a little bit more legible going forward. However, because these were continued from December 7th, I think that there was adequate noticing, adequate time for members of the public to either contact us by email, by telephone to come in person, or to contact the applicant to go out and see what was on the sites. So I believe that we have met the basic requirements of noticing for this application, the previous one, and I think for the third one on our agenda. But as I said, for Verizon, final message, you got to get it right going forward. You need to do what's necessary so that members of the public can read these, that you don't paste or post something over one sign so that now it causes even more confusion to members of the public trying to identify when an item is moving forward. This one, once again, is a standalone facility. I agree with staff that there really is no basis, no justification, reason to go up to 62 feet at this location. 53 feet is not going to be significantly different from 48 feet above ground, even though, someone may see that it's, a 5-foot difference, you might notice this. But generally, it is not a significant change from the existing height. My concern, perhaps, is that the side-mounted equipment and antennas may extend too far out. Looking at what someone submitted, this is not particularly attractive. However, in going out and driving around the vicinity, PG&E has a lot of clutter, and the county does as well, that appears quite similar to this. And I think it's difficult to distinguish between what is PG&E equipment, what is county equipment, what is Verizon's equipment. So as part of the design review process in terms of issuing building permits, we will make sure that staff takes a careful look at that for this one, the previous one, and for the third item. But I think we prefer the cantanas if it's possible. I think in this instance, we don't want them to go up to 62 feet in height. So we've got to look at what the option is. And this is, I believe, a preferable option where there will not be a significant increase in height of the pole. In terms of the location, I think that the applicant has done their due diligence in assessing some other potential sites, reasonably ruled those out. In terms of CEQA, I think we need to look at what is reasonably foreseeable. The applicant has indicated he does not have 100 applications in with the county that he's going to process in 2019. For me to look at 100 locations, I think that is speculative, and therefore I don't have evidence or information before me to show that this applicant is going to be processing 100 locations in 2019. I have to take him at his word at this point. These are small cell extensions on existing utility poles. And I think I've repeatedly said this when these items come before the zoning administrator, that if an applicant is going up 5 feet, if they're going up 8 feet, 10 feet, 11, 12 feet, that's a reasonable extension to a utility pole. And the height and extension and equipment are not going to appear significantly different than PG&E equipment. PG&E equipment, as I said previously, when I look out of my window at my house, I don't find PG&E equipment particularly attractive. I prefer to have a nice cherry blossom tree or something else outside of my window. But overall, the size and dimensions of this equipment are not so offensive that it will cause a severe visual impact. I think it's consistent with the size and location and dimensions of other PG&E and county equipment in the right-of-way. So having said that, I'm going to determine that this project is exempt from further environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. I am going to approve application 181100 with the findings and conditions incorporated in the staff report with the additional, I'm going to add a condition also. Once again, that the applicant's going to go out on an annual basis, inspect this equipment and verify that if anything is fading, if something's falling, you know, is no longer attached properly to the side of the pole, or the pole is leaning or something, that they will take the necessary steps to correct it, to work with PG&E, and that they will submit a statement to the county verifying that that inspection is taking place on an annual basis.
What about radiation levels?
So,
They should have to test for that too, excuse me, sorry.
radiation levels, if you read through the staff report, are assessed prior to this item getting agendized. So that's already been looked at.
At 64 feet, not at 53.
And so following issuance of the permit, while they're in the building permit stage, they will also have to do additional real-time review or analysis of radiation levels to ensure that their pre-application assessment is actually correct. So that will be done once again. So having said that, this application is approved. We're going to move on to application, to item number 3 on our agenda. Did you have something to say?
So just to clarify, are we adding a condition of approval that prior or with their building permit submittal, they submit a letter that assesses the RF of the revised designs? Was that the consideration there?
The revised designs.
No, they will need to do that. That's part of the building permit stage.
Okay.
They will have to do that testing, the actual field testing. That's a requirement in the code. So that will occur to verify that there are no excessive RF frequencies for any adjacent residents. One other thing, that January 11th, 2019 extension letter, I'd like to see that extended. If necessary, let's add a condition that if necessary, if an appeal is filed, that they will come in and extend that further, give us an additional tolling agreement. Okay, so let's move on to item